Joining me now for her say, the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price. Well, Senator Price, welcome. What's your response to those comments from former colleague Ken Wyatt?
Oh, well, I find it absolutely remarkable, in fact, that he's actually showing an interest in a place like Alice Springs, because there wasn't much interest in Alice Springs previously in his previous role, but he also evidently doesn't understand the role of local government, the core business of rates, roads and rubbish, or the fact that the town camps in and around Alice Springs were the responsibility of Tunganjira Council that are federally funded, as well as funded by the Territory Government, who actively campaign on behalf of Labor at elections also. But I do find it quite remarkable that evidently the Yes campaign must be on the back foot, because now he's come out to personally attack myself, Warren Mundine, and not known any of the work that I've done, obviously, during my time on council. You know, I guess a significant piece was when my motion was supported to initiate a pathway for young people from diversion from the justice system into apprenticeships and traineeships through the council. So, you know, of course, there are elements that that are obviously missed along the way, but I say, you know, he did have the role as Minister for Indigenous Australians, but that role he sought to empower bureaucracies, the peaks, as opposed to, I guess, the people. I mean, personally, I found it difficult to gauge him on issues of significance, you know, that I was concerned with, concerns around traditional owners, around being able to have real access to their own land for economic development opportunities. It was difficult to try to gauge those sorts of issues with him in his role at the time. But evidently it's my fault, and it's Warren Mundine's fault. But, you know, I'm not going to wear that. I'm here to fight on behalf of all Australians. I'm here to be realistic about the issues that Indigenous Australians in remote communities that I've certainly got close relationships with are concerned with. So, you know, it's sour grapes for those on the Yes campaign, and it's about pushing forward.
Yeah, I did find it interesting. I mean, my memories of Ken Wyatt when I worked with him in government, he liked to stand on ceremony. I think you're right to pick up that point. He loved a big bureaucracy. He didn't like necessarily getting on the ground that often. I think he probably flew over Alice Springs more than he ever visited Alice Springs. But of course, on his watch, he and Scott Morrison didn't do anything about extending those grog bans. They knew they were likely to lapse, as they did after the election was held and Labor got into office. He could very well have extended those grog bans, because that period of time where they were not in place, we saw horrific harm in Alice Springs. Now, after all of the violence, they've been reinstated in part. But if Wyatt had been doing his job, he could have avoided all of that.
Absolutely, he could have avoided all of that, knowing full well the consequences of lifting those grog bans, knowing full well the inadequacy of the Territory Labor government. There are so many things that he could have put in place. And the fact that also, well, you know, I mean, it was asked of me what sort of legacy I thought he'd left behind, and I really couldn't think of anything that of significance that he'd left behind after his particular role. But of course, apart from supporting the coalition of peaks, which really I haven't seen them, you know, create any headway either in this particular space.
I've got to ask you a controversial question. What is it about an Aboriginal woman like you, and your mum was a bit like this as well, confident, strong Aboriginal women get applauded by people around the country, but inside the Aboriginal community, we saw the attack on you from Warren, from Noel Pearson, beg your pardon, from Noel Pearson, and now this attack from Ken Wyatt. They don't tend to like these Aboriginal men, Aboriginal women that speak their mind.
No, no. I guess perhaps it's because we challenge their beliefs. We challenge what it is they're attempting to achieve for themselves. You know, all I can say is I've tried to be very honest about the circumstances confronted by those living in remote communities, and yeah, I get flack for that, but that's the truth. And no one can argue the truth. And I think, you know, well, I'm certainly look like I'm getting in the way of Ken Wyatt and Noel Pearson and what they're attempting to do to constitutionally enshrine a bureaucracy that's going to divide us along the lines of race, but will effectively empower more individuals like themselves. And they don't like that. And, you know, I'm here. I've never liked bullies, and I will always stand up to those that present themselves that way. And, you know, there's that element about me that I don't back down, I guess, and that upsets some people. And
no,
if that
you don't.
upsets them, well, I think they need to have a look at themselves.
All right, give me a sense of what it's like when you're getting around the community. I know you've done a huge amount of travel. You're activating Grassroots Australians. They're now understanding more and more about the voice. I think we're seeing that come through in the polling as they're walking away from it in droves. And it's interesting that over the weekend, the Yes23 campaign has basically recalibrated to match what you're doing. They're saying that they're going to give up the celebrities and the elites and all the other people that have been very much front of mind for their pitch to Australians. They're going to do what you and Warren and others are doing. So what's the reaction you're getting on the ground?
Look, so, I mean, I've had some wonderful engagements with Indigenous members of different communities from I've been to Dubbo, I've been through Tasmania as well. You know, there's people in those communities who are just, they're so grateful to have had me visit there and speak face to face with them and have those conversations about what's going on the ground in their communities, and to be heard, and particularly so that they don't support the Yes campaign, and they're sick of being sort of framed in a particular way as Indigenous Australians. I mean, in Tasmania, in the community of Smithton, the Aboriginal community there were just so grateful. They said, look, we have put an invitation out to so many politicians to come and speak to us, including Minister Linda Burney. They said, you're the first one to come and visit us. You're the first one, you know, to be one-on-one, to have those conversations, to hear us out. And we're really grateful for that. And, you know, I mean, the Yes campaign, it's come too late for them to try to recalibrate. You know, they thought that they could win the hearts of Australians by imposing the, sports people and celebrities and that sort of thing, and getting them to tell Australians how to suck eggs. And basically Australians are like, no, that's, you know, we're everyday people. We want to know what the reality of the situation is. We want to know what's going on. We want to be informed, and we also want to be heard, and we want to be one people in this country. And that's the bottom line, I think. You know, it's about being realistic and talking to people on a human level.
Keep it up. Keep it up. We're all behind you, Dissent.